So having said that, I'm going to introduce Xiaolin. Now, while I'm introducing her, there is a question that Xiaolin wanted to know as we got started, and I'm going to launch the question and give you the time it takes me to introduce her to respond to it. Xiaolin Heiju is an instructional designer at the Information Technology Assistance Center at Kansas State University. She has taught in various colleges and universities for the past 20 years and is currently teaching part-time and online for Washington Online, based out of Washington State. She writes for the Instructional Design Open Studio blog and led the team that originated the eLearning and Technology Exchange Wiki. Xiaolin also reviews academic articles for Merlot's Journal of Online Learning and Teaching and EDUCAUSE's and the EDUCAUSE Quarterly. So, having said that, I am going to close and share. So you can see that the majority of you have published, but rarely, and 21% do it regularly. So having seen and said all that, Xiaolin, I'm turning this over to you.
Okay. Let's see if I have to do anything. So now you've got my, okay, so show my screen.
There we go.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about the scare.
Well, as long as you're here, I am more than satisfied. Thank you.
Hopefully things will not crash. Okay, so as Steve said, we're going to talk today about creating interactive articles. And per the introduction that you've seen before, I'll just go ahead and pass by this screen. Basically, the way I conceptualize interactive articles is as sort of the current version of academic writing. So I'm going to first begin by defining what a traditional form academic article is. It's the basic currency of academia, right? Because this is what we use to introduce new ideas and new research. So version 1 traditional articles tend to be fairly linear. They tend to be text-based. And then when we took it online, we have hyperlinking, we have the addition of images. And now with sort of version 3 interactive articles, we can embed a game. We can use immersive experiences. We can put in photo albums and slideshows. We can put in videos as part of the article. We can have interactive maps and timelines, and a lot of, pretty much anything you can do in a digital space, you can then take into an interactive article. So I think it would help to define what interactivity is, just to get it started. So one, it's a way to have more interactions between an audience and a writer or a team of writers. You're giving readers a lot more choices about the online experiences that they can opt into experiencing. You can create experiences which are immersive, that use multiple senses, that might be, visual, auditory. We can actually also build more tactile types of interactions as the more tactual devices are brought into play. So we can create a full sort of surround sort of experience for readers of articles. And I say readers in a very broad sense. It's more like people who experience interactive articles. You can elicit commentary from people, and they can potentially edit or revise part of whatever it is you're creating. So this idea of, this virtual community of people who can comment and who can build a community around a certain informational artifact. You can also have social engagement, because a lot of interactive articles may also be augmented by wikis or by other types of social socio-technical spaces and other communications tools. And then ultimately, the ideal is that you could meet people online and come together and co-create ideas. You could co-create certain objects, that sort of thing. So that's the sort of, absolute ideal in terms of interactive articles. So why consider an interactive article? Well, partly for all those reasons that I've already talked about, but also because you want it to layer information. You want to build in complexity to people's learning and to their experiences. And I wanted to mention, if any of you have comments or questions, to go ahead and post them. I don't know if I can see them because I'm not seeing any sort of chat activity, but I don't know if I have that level of access, and that's just an aside. Okay.
Well, I can make that happen for you, so I will turn that on so you can see the Q&A. Okay?
Okay, thank you. Did I just hear your dog barking?
Not mine.
Was it
no,
yours? Okay, that's hearing. Okay,
it
then
may
I'm
have been
hearing
me sounding like a dog.
Okay. Okay. So then the question is, when we talk about building interactive articles, and based on the poll, it looks like about maybe a little less than a fifth of you publish regularly, and some of the others may be thinking about it or haven't yet. So generally what I've found to be a giant hurdle for a lot of people is, why even go public, right? The public may not seem very friendly. It seems like risk, and it is. Well, some of the reasons, at least from an instructional designer perspective, is that you want to enhance learning about the particular topic, but you also want your development team that's working on the project to apply their skills in order to take a project out into the world. You want to raise awareness of the project, particularly for grant funders who have paid for your project. Your PIs, your principal investigators for the grants, often like to be able to cite an article or two that's linked to the project to show that they're getting it out into the world. And right now we've got an amazing digital space. We've got this great authoring tool that we can use to create all sorts of contents and to deliver it in rich ways that we've not been able to before. So what are some cons? Well, there are political risks. We'll talk a little bit about that. It takes a lot of energy and time to put one together. Often there is no project funding to create these articles, and it's generally considered beyond the purview of the project. I mean, it's something that the institution basically has to just pay for because it's considered part of the cost of doing business by doing the research. And if you're not careful, you're going to end up, and even if you are careful, there are potential legal liabilities. So it's important to mitigate those as you go forward. And lastly, sometimes in some workplaces there might be professional tensions. So that might be a con because people think that you're wanting the attention when in fact that may not be the case at all. So it's important early on to identify showstoppers. Because you don't want to pursue creating an interactive article if there are some things that are going to scotch the project as you proceed. So if you don't have political support on a project, generally you're not going to want to fight forward to push that. If the principal investigators of the grant or other administrators are not supportive, generally I also wouldn't push the issue. Your development team has to have the capabilities of developing an interactive article, and we'll take a look at some of the types of interactivity by looking at the two articles that were referenced in the introduction. If there's content that you create in the course that is not releasable to the public, that is proprietary, that is essentially non-includable, in that case, obviously, that's also another showstopper. So these are some critical things to think about. The one other thing, too, is when we talk about going public, a lot of people have an outsized sense of what that even means. The public is just other people. It's not this magical thing, and it's not going to change a life. It's just more information. It's just creating a community, potentially collaborating somewhere down the line, but not often, right? So basically, it helps to sort of control expectations. So I'd like to throw out a question to you all. Let's see if I can move this. I can actually see what I'm doing. So what do you think are some basic steps to creating an article, like an interactive article? And what parts of an article should be made interactive and why? And if you could please put that into the questions area, and I'll see if I can read it. So you're using Google Docs to publish. Good. Oh, let's see if I can get this. My screen is looking kind of strange. I can only barely see a few of the.
You may want to open it a bit or put it separately, but let me read it to read them out loud if you'd like me to.
Please.
Okay. Melanie says those parts that can't be well explained by text. Doug says the product material should be interactive parts of the article. Christopher suggests history, trivia, infographics, maybe definitions of unknown words where ideas are complex. There's too many to start naming names anymore. Identify relevant topics. And comment as I'd like Skyline Drive to share. But several of us have used Wiki to make an interactive book. Creating structure that includes multimedia. Images for those who are visual learners. Probably intro and conclusion summary. Can that part be interactive? Add a show me part. Besides pre-writing, not sure what steps are necessary to create an article. Part of the article contains figures, tables, and links, and of course, if they're multimedia as opposed to static, that's more interesting. And of course, there's a question about copyright, which you started to address because copyright's an important issue when you start to make things available online where they can be easily replicated as digital content. So there's all, and the list goes on.
Excellent. I'm sorry that all I have is like I can see like half of a line at a time, and I don't know why it is that and I'm really sorry. It doesn't usually behave this way when I'm on a webinar. But it's very cool that you have different projects going on, and I think there's a fair amount of sophistication already, actually, in terms of some of the plans for the writing. Okay. If any of you would like to interact more directly, there's contact information at the very end, and I promise to answer every email that is sent to me. But I honestly cannot read the responses to the questions. But what Stephen said is helpful.
Shellen, there's a way that you can disconnect the question box from the panel and therefore make it larger.
Can you drag and drop it?
Well, there's a funny shaped icon to the right of where it says Q&A. It looks like a little box next to the X. The X will close, the little box will disconnect it from the panel, and then you can make it as big as you want it.
Okay. I'm going to, you know what? Because the system has been, I'm going to have to just run with that, and I'll have to review the comments later. It's not very apparent to me. So sorry about that, and thank you for the comments, and I promise to get to those in a bit. But I'd like to give a very fast overview of the basic steps then to creating an interactive article. And then this is going to be the last slide before I jump out to the various articles, the interactive articles that were created. Number one, I think, is the most critical piece. This is the idea that you have to have some sort of proof of concept or something that is unusual in your project that has value for other people, that has some generalizability or some transferability, something that's novel. And the more, if you read whatever's out in the world in terms of education, it's harder and harder to get to proof of concept. But generally, if you do get grant funding for something, it's probably proof of concept to some degree, because people are not going to fund you to reinvent the wheel. If you think about the political environment, think about concentric circles. At the very middle, you've got your development team, then you've got your organization, then you've got maybe the larger academic community, and you need sort of political buy-in from all levels. right? Because you want to make sure that that whatever you're doing aligns with the core values of your institution or organization. And generally for publishing it will. And then for available resources, it's whatever content you've created for, like digital content you've created for a project, those are maybe potentially content you can use in the article with permission. There might be open source contents, stuff that other people have created that if you write an article and it's an open source article and you're not profiting off of it, there's a lot of potentially really good content you can use. And the reason why you need to know what you have available is because whatever you don't have, you're going to have to make from scratch, and that takes a lot of effort. For suitable topic suitability, you need to find an audience. It's hard to create an audience from scratch, and hopefully there are some who already have some interest in the particular field, and the topic has to have some relevance to them. For number 5, you need to plan and execute the article, and you build to the same standards as instructional designers do in terms of accessibility, in terms of intellectual property, so copyright laws, that sort of thing. You want to keep those standards. And then you do your alpha testing and your beta testing, make sure everything works because what you've created is electronic, and you want to make sure that you have no dead links and that everything functions the way it should. And now you can actually even test, or should probably even test for mobile devices, which SoftChalk 7 allows you to build to. And then you shop your manuscript around to potential publishers. Generally, it helps to have one that you target to with a good supportive sort of editorial board. Then you're going to get peer reviews. The more peer reviewers there are, the more different types of feedback you're going to get, and the more diversity of opinions and even polarization of ideas. And then as a team you have to come back together and decide what revisions you're going to put in and why. And once everything is done, you launch it and you clean up and you do publicity and outreach for whatever you've created. Okay, are there any questions at this point? And that was a really quick and dirty, and I'm going to stop the slideshow here. But before we head on, I'd like to see if there are any basic questions.
Yes, Shellen, there are several questions, and I
okay,
think that I can.
Unlocked.
I'm pardon?
I got the pane unlocked. I can see the chat now. Oh, I see.
But there's
and
a
now
lot there, so let me start at the top where there were some questions, if you will. First one was, do interactive articles have the same credibility as the traditional print article?
That's a superb question. It depends on what field you work for and the values of the domain field. Where a lot of administrators are going is you're not going to get a wide readership if you write just to the traditional print articles. Print journals are expensive. They're expensive to subscribe to, and many of them now have electronic counterparts. So the idea really is to get the story out to a wider audience and to justify tax funds that are used to support public education and research. So it really is very field specific, but I am getting many more administrators in various parts of the campus who are very interested in getting their faculty to publish about online learning in an online interactive format. So it would be good to sort of sample your environment and to see what your administrators think.
Yeah, as a follow-up, and I think that this is maybe all over the map as you were talking, and you may not be able to answer succinctly, is give examples of some journals that are accepting interactive articles.
That's a great one actually too. The one I'm going to show you is called EDUCAUSE Quarterly, and we're going to look at the last 2 issues of this journal. And when I say last, I really mean last. It's now changing to, I think, EDUCAUSE Review Online. So the name has changed. The focus they're going to still make it as multimedia as possible, but that touches on a great point that not all online journals are actually interested in handling microsites. They're not necessarily interested in any, actually none of them are interested that I know of in hosting the video. So generally what you're going to have is you're going to have an online article that's interactive, that's cobbled together with pieces, hosted on, a site that hosts videos. You're going to have another piece maybe in SoftChalk Connect. Maybe you're going to have another piece elsewhere. So, and that's a very good point. So there is not one journal that's going to house all the pieces, and that's another half of that truth. It's not going to be possible, and most don't maintain the complex servers to deliver all those different types of contents. So you're going to have to find different places. Okay, any others?
I think that you're publishing research articles. So the question Cheryl asked is, have you used the same format for informational articles as well?
That's a very good point too. I publish a lot in books, and I also do just straight sort of print articles, and those are not interactive. So in terms of, I think in terms of everything that I've done, I think I've only actually done probably 2 really interactive articles, and these are the 2 you're going to see today. If you go into EDUCAUSE, you're going to see that I have some other articles as well, but I don't think those are really interactive. One of them has a project that has some machinima in it, but so you sort of push a little edge here and then push another little edge there. So in all honesty, I've only actually ever done 2, and I would put a lot of thought into it before I did another, just because it takes a lot of work. It takes certain conditions to exist to actually do it. I love making them, but it's a lot of work. So, okay, let's see.
Okay, well, let's go on. There's one more question, but I think I will save that for later on because I think it will be answered as you go.
Okay, okay. Let's hope it is. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to minimize the slideshow. Hopefully, really hope.
And as you're doing that, let me remind people that you had a very extensive slideshow that you really went through quickly. That full slideshow will be available in a variety of ways. I will add it to the email you'll get tomorrow. There will be a link to a SoftChalk Connect lesson. And if you go to our website, even now actually, you will see the link to the slideshow as well. So while she quickly went through that in order to get through everything, you'll have access to the complete slideshow so you can review it at your leisure.
Yeah, thank you so much for setting that up. Yeah, so when Steve and I were dry running this, he was like, Charlene, this is taking too much time. So okay, I better get to it. Okay, so the first article we're looking at is in the most recent issue of EDUCAUSE Quarterly. The primary author here is Brent Anders because he created most of the game piece and all the videography for this. Debbie Briggs, I'm going to scroll down so you can see her image. This is Dr. Deborah Briggs. She is a global health expert, and she focuses on rabies. And that's just an image of her in front of a green screen, and all the other elements were then put into it later. But needless to say, because I work with different types of faculty, you have to really have a really strong relationship of trust before you take on a project like this, and she was very game. She lives in Europe. She and I would communicate a lot by email to build her global health course, and then every time she was in town, she would actually be going to various, like the CDC, and she'd be going to different other professional destinations, and we would just catch her for maybe an hour, maybe 2 hours. And so these videos were caught when she was here briefly, and so on. And as I got to know her better, I'm going to click into a microsite that was created using SoftChalk. I learned a lot more about her work and also about how often she was traveling. And so we got talking, and I thought, you know what, it'd be so cool if we made a game about global health. We would do it like, where in the world is Carmen Sandiego, except it would be where in the world is Dr. Salis Dynamica Mundi, which means Dr. Global Health, Global Dynamic Health. And so this sidebar was created purely in SoftChalk, and we have an open source image here related to rabies. And for those of you who are not very familiar with rabies, as you learn more, it's pretty scary how common it is and how many people still die of it in this day and age. And so this is a World Health Organization map, an open source resource. So anytime you build almost in a health issue, there's a lot of really great content that's open source. CDC is also great. And this is the website. So Dr. Briggs is the director of the Global Alliance for Rabies Control, and that's her site. This is an iframe of the World Rabies Day website. So you can see this actually has the whole site contained within it, and these are all live links. But I don't want to sort of mess the system up, so I'm not going to click into anything. And then this is the Rabies Blueprint. This is what has been learned about how to try to get rabies under control based on a lot of research and direct experiences in global health. And the strategies may not be exactly what you might imagine, you know, in terms of what actually works. And then some questions that people can think of, and you'll see that we've got a lot of photo albums of photos from all around the world about fighting rabies. And this is highly graphic, but if you go to the article, you can see it. You'll see that we have blacked out people's faces. Some of the images here are just traumatizing to look at. And then based on time zones around the world, because of her travels, we've got slideshows on Guatemala, Egypt, the Serengeti, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, India, Indonesia, Thailand, China, and the Bohol, Philippines. And these are all, actually, I'll just click a little bit into one, but they're all interesting. And I think this one is about a clinic where they are offering shots to keep rabies out of the dog population. So a lot of this is education. A lot of it is working with people in country to create a sustainable sort of program to fight rabies, and on and on. So anyway, that gives you a sense. I don't know if you can actually see that or if this is coming through. And it's interesting because Dr. Briggs took most of these photos. I think a few she got from colleagues, but every time a dog comes on scene, you can see that the photographer is highly wary. And I think that's part of her work. Okay, so I'm going to jump out of that, but that is an interactive piece. And this is called a microsite, and it's embedded in this article. And those who've been paying attention to the headers as we've been going along, this is pretty much a very traditional sort of organizational structure for the article. And then we created, as a team, a game. This is the Where in the World is Dr. Salis Dynamica Mundi. And we have, at the very top level, sort of this organizational structure where you start out at a hotel where she first comes to the notice of this journalist. And I'm going to go ahead and this is Mr. Newsian, and he actually is, I'm going to hit play here, but I'm going to not let the sound come through because you guys can actually hear it on your own. You can see we had to use Vimeo to host this. I'm in a cubicle talking to you, and all my colleagues have come back from a meeting. So okay, but anyway, so then this is a fake news agency, and
actually, we could only hear it through your phone, so
I know,
you should turn the speaker up.
I refuse. I am afraid to because I'm sitting in a cubicle and I don't want to.
Oh, okay, that explains it.
But you guys, when you guys come see the article, please see this because this is Zachary Cavey, and he is just hilarious. So he's tasking you. Okay, so he's giving you an assignment to help Nina Novis, who is the reporter, to do to find out where Dr. Salis Dynamica Mundi is. And this is a really quiet guy, so yeah, the sight of him, I was like, what? Who is that? Okay, anyway, so then we go back. So then the game, we've got various pieces here. So there's information about the role of conferences in global health. And then based on a few clues, you can decide where you think Dr. Mundi might be. So then you can play the video, and all of this again was shot in about an hour. And so they use green screen or chroma keying to put in all these different backgrounds. We put in Brent Anders and his team put in music to create the sense of a locale and to create the fun pieces of it. So there's the science piece, and there's a lot of planning on the science piece. There was a lot of planning on the gameplay. And then I think this is a really cool part. I'm going to go ahead and jump back to the contents. And then there's a debriefing on the backstory. So in terms of the game design, the public health ideas, and then this is Brent, and he did a video on the videography, and then the gameplay dynamics, and then the science of green screening, and making that more real. Okay, and so this is one example of an interactive article, and I'm going to go ahead and jump to the next one, because I think, let's see. So Steve, how am I doing on time? Hello?
I got to remember to turn my speaker on. You could take up to 10 more minutes, and then we can make sure we do the Q&A. There's about a half dozen questions out there, so we have to make sure we leave time at the end. So somewhere 5 to 10 minutes.
Okay, I'll try to do it in quick time. Okay, so then another one is the participatory design of a today and future digital entomology lab. The entomology lab in real life looks like this. Hopefully you can all okay, so the pictures are finally coming in, but what this is there is a lab at Kansas State that helps students look at the morphology of insects. So looking at their form and structure, and this is not painting in very easily, so I'm going to just sort of skip it. But if you go to the article, you'll find the link to it, so you can actually see what it looks like in real life. But this is the microsite piece that was built in SoftChalk. So this article, what the purpose of this article was to introduce what this project was. You can see that here. So we talk about the workflow, the timeline, how the site was built, and then there is an exploratory for insects. So you get to learn more about insects, and this will be sort of fun. I think you get to see some of the interactivity tools within SoftChalk. And then at the end, I was asking people to see if they wouldn't mind contributing ideas for future versions of this digital entomology lab. So we use the highlight here to make it look like a work in progress. And then here we have the photo album, which I like immensely, but this is a flash object, so it doesn't play an iPad. And that's a photo of the actual physical lab, the microscopes there, John Cawthorn going through the insect files, some of the tools of the trade to collect insects, and these are a lot of pinned insects. And we're not going to go through all of this, but we had to make a photo box, and we got a really high-end macro photography camera as part of a grant to capture close-in images of insects. And while it may seem pretty straightforward in terms of getting lighting exactly right, depth of field exactly right, the white color balance right, the focus right, it was rough. Okay, so we have these really cool samples, and I'm going to go ahead and I think, let's see, and then we also use microscopy for the very, very small ones like these. So anyway, we did the image captures, and then we have various interactive sorts of objects. These were all created in SoftChalk, so the lateral angle, anterior, right? So we've got the posterior, the dorsal, the ventral, and then multiple angles. So the idea of, because insects have bilateral symmetry, you only have to hit them from 5 angles to pretty much get their whole form. And then SoftChalk 7 also has activities that can be created just for mobile devices. So you can actually read these articles you can actually view these articles on a mobile device, although if you use an iPad or an iPhone, you're going to miss out on some stuff. So there's interactive pieces. You can actually have people sequence information in proper order, and then they'll get feedback based on what they put in. Okay, so some of the images are not coming in, so I'm going to see if I can get this to work a little bit better without causing other havoc. Okay, so anyway, this is when you hit the article, you'll all see this, but this is a 2D visual workflow that was created in Microsoft Visio, pretty nifty. And then this is a digital sort of timeline. And then there was audio to tell the story, the backstory. We have an iframe that contains the digital entomology lab. And then, okay, and then this gives you an example of a Visio, 2D Visio file. So maybe, and so what this is sort of a functional diagram of what the new site could look like, because we did not have a web developer. This is Dr. Smith, C. Michael Smith, and he's the entomologist who was the PI on this project, and that's one of his lectures. So you can see you can mix in all sorts of multimedia to create this, and here's an ASCII text, ASCII art of an insect. And then we've got, you could do a word find, because for a lot of learning, part of it has to do with the mastery of a certain language, right, or a certain terminology for the field. And so the cool thing about these is that you could, if you wanted the answers fast, you could just hit finish, and then if you restart it, it would mix it all up again for you. So you only build it once, and then it's just hosted on a server. Okay, and then you can also have crossword puzzles. Same thing here. Whoops. Oh, sorry, I hit a restart, but then here, right, it remixes in different ways. And those were different terms. These are digital jigsaw puzzle pieces, and this, oh wait, is that right? No, that can't be right. What is that? Okay, I'm really bad at this. Okay, so anyway, so you've got these different pieces, and you're supposed to do the corner pieces. I'm really bad at this, so yeah, anyway. But then you're going to end up with an image of an insect, and it tells you what type of insects these are. So again, we were trying to appeal to not only, you know, sort of university level people, but also potentially K-12. Can we create a digital entomology lab that also appeals to kids, and that might have some benefit for them to learn? So again, this is just to prime people so they get a sense of some of the aspects of the entomology lab, you know, and about insects, so they can be primed to think about how to design it for, you know, to help us design it. This is about how do you use a kill jar to kill the insects in a humane way, and then these are steps in terms of how you would pin them. And then that same activity, except now created as a mobile activity. And then these are digital flashcards, so you can practice different types of terminology, and you would be shocked at just how complicated insects can be. And then this is a 44-step dichotomous key, which I don't know if I won't have time to explain it, but basically if you find a mysterious insect that has not been identified, that'll help you key it. That'll help you sort of assign it to a particular family. And then there were design questions we asked. These are just basic tables. This is a presentational format for a mobile device, which still, given the small screen size, has some pretty severe limits. This activity is a sorting activity, so you flip the card and figure out where it goes. So if they're completing a degree, I'm assuming that's formal learning, so flip it again. A site designer, this might be more informal. Well, actually, this probably is wrong. Oops. So, oh, well, see? So I don't even know what the answers are. But anyway, and so that's another interactive activity. This is a link to a MediaWiki site where we were hoping to collect information. And actually, people emailed me offline, but nobody gave us anything on the site. So I had 0 responses. Nobody did a thing, or nobody went to participate. And then this just talks about how we make decisions when we talk about design as instructional designers. What are the benefits, what are the costs, that sort of thing. Who are the stakeholders, and so on. Okay, so that gives you another sense. This is the microsite for this Digital Entomology Lab article. And I think, Steve, it's yours again, and I'll see if I can, so if you can take the screen over.
Well, okay, we'll leave the screen with you
Oh, you will?
because some of the questions may need you to show something. So for the moment, let's leave it where it is, and let's get to some of the questions. There's a lot of really positive feedback about the way you've used SoftChalk and how powerful SoftChalk can be. So somebody commented that you picked a really nice presenter to show off SoftChalk tool.
Oh. well, did you tell them how long you asked me to help you?
Oh yeah, this conversation with Charlene has been going on for a couple of years, and I remembered I asked her half a dozen times to do an Innovator session, and she remembers just once. So
no, he only asked me once. He only asked me like twice. He asked me twice.
But we finally have her, and now you know why I was so eager to get her to join us. So there's a couple of questions, just a brief one. Microsite. Somebody was asking what you meant by microsite, and I think related to that is how the articles are sort of formatted and available, because people really want to know how to get access to the articles. And maybe what I can do is add the link to the articles in the follow-up email that goes out. I've already added the link to the slideshow, but let me add the link to the articles as well.
Yeah, that would be great. The way the articles are put together, you've got a top level where you've got the structure put in by the publisher. So the publisher has a web designer. So if you make a sidebar, if you make some of these other pieces, they design sort of the top level interactivity so you can navigate through the article. But for the internal pieces, SoftChalk actually has a built-in system where where you can paginate certain pieces and where you can deal with the navigation. You can label headers as like a main header or a secondary or a tertiary header, and the way you label it, it'll pull out a certain table of contents, which makes it very navigable, very easy to use, very easy to read. So that's actually a lot of it. A lot of the organizational structure is the tool. Some of it, as you build it, you're going to get ideas for how it should look, and that's so something evolves, I guess. I don't know if that answered the question.
I hope so. Seemed to me. There's another question, a couple of the questions about mobile accessible and Flash related, and so is content you created mobile accessible? Did you think about that as you tried to create the content?
Yeah, the SoftChalk 7 outputs the content that you create in HTML5. So everything pretty much easily resizes and it looks great on a mobile device. They also have special activities that are just mobile web-based apps that you can actually create. But the ones that were created that were just basic activities that were off a website will just, if you're in an iPad, it'll just push out a message that says, you need a different form of Flash, or this will not play because it's a Flash object. So I think there's a lot of us that are hopeful that eventually, whatever contents we create, will be able to be usable even if they are Flash objects, on an Apple device. So, okay, yes.
Yeah, the direction that SoftChalk is going is to replace all of our Flash activities with HTML5 activities. So we are moving in that direction. We now have a half dozen mobile-ready activities, but the others that are Flash, we are going to begin to convert them to HTML5 so that we will make it available anywhere. The trouble with Flash, even developers of Flash understand that it's not a very good format, and they're going to stop supporting it. So there's going to be a major move away from it at any rate. So that the industry is changing in that way.
Yes, and I think Adobe Edge is sort of the next thing after Flash that they're trying to create, so that we're not going to have Flash in order to play interactive objects and that sort of thing. So it's coming, and so did I think about just the mobile ones? Yes, I did, in the sense that some of the activities are mobile friendly, and that was just more to amuse me than to really, it wasn't. Well, it was also to enhance the article, but it was a lot to amuse me. So it's actually very, very easy to build and very fun, but there are pretty severe limitations and those of you who work in this a lot will have a sense that, there's only so much you can show in a very small window, but if you combine it with a lot of other contents, which I think SoftChalk is fabulous at, you can then create the larger external context that can give value to the smaller activity. And my window's all popped back again, so I can't read, so I'm going to rely on you.
Well, there seemed to be some confusion about a few things, so let me ask it. It says, so the actual article was not written in SoftChalk, just the microsites were built in SoftChalk, and
yes.
they were linked within the article.
Yes, exactly right. You have it,
I mean,
exactly.
but the major portions of the article were the microsites, SoftChalk, if you will.
The heart of the articles were the microsites that were created in SoftChalk, the very core heart of it. The problem is, well, here's the really fun part about creating the microsites is that you actually have control of the content and you can update at any time. So usually when you go to publication, they won't even let you change a comma on any electronic article, even though they can go in and put in a comma and it takes them nothing to do it, if you really needed to change anything. However, I mean, like on the global health game, I mean, we went in and we swapped in 2 videos that came in later because that was when Dr. Briggs was in town. We could never have done that if it were hosted by the publisher. The truth of the matter, too, though, is that the publisher did not have the servers to actually host the contents. So that's another piece of that.
And SoftChalk Connect came to the rescue a couple times with making sure a server was available. Question: Do teachers use these articles to create lessons in an online course? Can anyone use them? Or do you have to be SoftChalky and use Connect? So part of the question is are you making this available via Creative Commons? What is the availability?
Yeah. The learning objects are all Creative Commons released. The articles are all Creative Commons released. If anybody wants a piece of it, if anybody wants the whole thing, there's a lot of freedom and they can actually use it. So yeah, I mean, we've had a journal in Italy publish one of the open source articles, although they picked a piece of it. They ran with just a piece of it. They didn't run with a sidebar, which I was hoping they would also use, that a colleague of mine had written for a prior project that was in EduCause. So yeah, no, I mean, it's totally open for non-commercial use. And a lot of people do use these contents, and people are very welcome to it. We'd be delighted for them to use it.
Excellent. Let's see. There's so many questions, and one of them is, and it was asked in the middle of the presentation, these interactive articles, are there specific technical requirements that some of the journals accepting interactive articles have?
Oh, yeah. You know what? We've never run into any tech challenges. If you can get the thing to function in web space, they don't even get into it. They don't care very much at all what happens in the back end. And these publish very easily. I've dropped these onto servers just to test them. I've used them in learning management systems, and they just play very, very easily. The really cool thing is that SoftChalk actually keeps a pretty deep repository of information about different learning management systems, and so they understand if there are quirks, what those quirks might be, because I've had to rely on them a few times because I do projects all over Kansas. I've got projects at other schools that use different learning management systems, and they've been able to get it to play every time. So we've not, I mean, if there are challenges, someone in SoftChalk generally is aware of what the challenges are. Yeah, so there's nothing special that you need.
Right. Let me comment. Somebody asked if SoftChalk can be used for iBook authors. I'm not sure whether the question is referring to the new Apple.
It is in reference to Apple, and the iBook comes out, I think, in EPUB format, and they have got their own sort of internal ways to create books. But the challenges with the iBook author, from what I can see, is that there is no mitigation for accessibility, whereas every piece of SoftChalk contents have metadata labeling. They've got accessibility mitigations. And so that it's machine readable, it's accessible. You can put in transcripts, for audio and for video. You can put alt text for images, etc. You can label, you can tag text. And I did not see any of those mitigations in iBook Author. But it was only very recently that I looked at it. But I do understand that it's built for proprietary for iPads. So
right, exactly. And SoftChalk content is created for web-based delivery, which is a very different model. Integrates with learning management systems and any cloud-based system. And you can put it on, you can put it on any laptop or desktop or iPad, and etc. So it isn't limited. Having said that, the iBook and Apple initiative has really made people seriously look at what online interactive publishing is like, and I think that has made SoftChalk really stand out in a different way that it hadn't before Apple's announcement. So anyway, I just throw that out there.
Yep.
There's a lot of questions, but our hour's about up, so I'm going to take the presentation back.
Okay.
And go back to my slideshow but let me say this about what we have just gone through. There are many questions that were not answered. These questions will all be delivered to Xiaolin and to me, and we will try to get to the ones that we didn't get to. I mean, some of the questions we didn't answer directly, but they were answered indirectly as part of the entire conversation. So I'm thinking that you will get that information one way or the other. But what I really want to talk to you about is that there's a lot of ways to learn more about SoftChalk. And one of the best ways is this Innovators and Online Learning webinars that Xiaolin has done an extraordinary job of showing you how wonderful and dynamic this can be. We can give you private or customized demonstrations, but if you are not a client yet, download the free 30-day trial. It's free. It's fully functional. Anything you create will be available forever. We have quick tour videos on our website. You can look at our softchalk.com website. Go online, sign up for our newsletter, etc. So there's a lot of ways you can learn more about what we do, because a lot of you have asked questions about SoftChalk and how it has actually been a part of the content that Xiaolin showed you. And much of what she showed you was created in SoftChalk. There's a few other tools, but by and large, it was the SoftChalk, presentation. So let me go to the last page just to let everybody know that you can get hold of us. You can get hold of Xiaolin at xiaolin@k-state.edu. And you can get hold of me at steve@softchalk.com if you want to ask something of me. If you are just chomping at the bit saying, after I've seen what SoftChalk can do, I need it now, call our sales team. Get a hold of them, and we will get back to you very quickly. So having said all that, I want to thank you for spending the hour with us. Xiaolin, it was a tremendous presentation. People are really excited. And as we leave, I need to quote, if I can find his quote. Come on, Claude. Claude suggested, and I've worked with Claude for years. So Claude Whitmire is one of the chief people in an organization called Future You, and his quote is, "Incredible, very inspiring. We have seen the future of academic journal articles, and this is it." So thank you, Xiaolin, for showing us the future.